Big welcome to everyone joining us. I'm thrilled to have Melissa Katz, the Director of Talent Acquisition Technologies and Programs for Abbvie, with us today. She's going to be talking a little bit more about how she's transformed the talent acquisition function at Abbvie, along with other companies before that, Unilever and Moody's and other. Melissa herself is very experienced in technology implementation, process improvements, redesigned the future of talent acquisition, upskilling, training, and next generation. And in her spare time, she spends time with family earning badges on her Peloton. So those on Peloton can find her there. Thank you for joining us, Melissa.
Hi, thank you. Welcome.
And I'm Athena Karp, CEO and founder of HiredScore, and thrilled to be playing the role of interviewer today to learn more about Melissa's journey. So to begin, Melissa, would be great if we can just get a brief overview of Abbvie's recruitment innovation vision and the role of technology within there.
Sure. So I don't know how many people know, but Abbvie has recently acquired Allergan. So prior to Abbvie, I was actually with Allergan and went in with the merger with them in June. And I think it was a great time to join the organization because what they were really doing was starting their journey of a TA transformation of how do we really want to become a world-class TA organization. And that encompassed everything from what technologies they use, what processes they were going to put in place, and even the structure of the organization. And one of the big things in my role now is they developed a COE, and part of that COE is our PMO team. And our PMO team is really in charge of overlooking all of the processes, all of the how we're going to stack the technology, how we're going to basically build that global foundation to get that vision of that world-class TA for enhancing the candidate experience, the hiring manager experience, and the recruiter experience. So we're really excited that we are digging into that now, and we're starting that journey as we speak, as we go into one zone of Taleo with all of our Allergan and Abbvie colleagues.
One of the questions that people ask a lot in our space, Melissa, is this technology toolkit, and maybe you can just talk a little bit about how you view the foundational stack versus the second generation, third generation stack, and some of your journeys on that. But especially this technology that we'll talk through, what is that unlocking? What's kind of the business driver? There's a lot of proactive work, strategic work, new work that you mentioned. You and the team are really excited to be able to gain the time and headspace back to do that. So I think an overview of the why would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think the big piece is really looking at overall what we're trying to accomplish. And I think anytime you build a process and a technology stack, you really have to identify the why. Why are we doing this? What is our overall outcome? What is that kind of the business need? And a lot of that right now is really just making sure that we have a global foundation that the team can kind of run on together with some agility in there as well, because we all know every market is different. Basically also being able to build out that data so that we can tell the story throughout the process, because also what that is going to mean is the speed and the quality that we're able to start giving to the hiring managers, which is obviously always what they're asking for. And then finally, the big thing that we're looking to kind of do at the end of the day is really just free up, again, a lot of that transactional admin work that recruiters are constantly always doing, and freeing up that space. So we know the rec volumes probably won't go down. We've been lucky enough that we have been pretty busy, even with COVID and all these times. But there's always more that a corporate TA team needs to do. So there's always more projects or initiatives or proactive sourcing and pipelining that needs to be happening. So how do we build it so that even if you still have a rec load of 40 recs, you still don't feel like that's all you can do in your day? So those are the problems that we're looking to solve right now with the technology that we have. And it's going to come in waves. So for us, we're not looking, I've learned in my past is you don't kind of just dump a whole bunch of technology all at once and thinks that it's going to solve all your problems. You really have to be thoughtful about building the right foundation first, what works for your team. I kind of talk about a foundation that's almost like built like for hurricanes. You don't want something that's so rigid that it doesn't bend and move, because you need it to bend and move with global processes and things like this. And then having the core technologies like a HiredScore that can help you really advance, and all that transactional work kind of help break that up so it feels lighter. And then once you get the right process, the right foundation, you get your ATS in a good space, you layer it something over like a HiredScore to help with that, to help you run through your sourcing and your fetch and all that types of stuff that we're bringing in now. And then obviously we also have a CRM. How do we integrate all those core systems together, get it running globally, and then hopefully go to phase 2 with all the fancier bells and whistles like our chatbots and scheduling tools and video interviewing and things like that. So that's usually what we're doing for wave 2. And I've even been told, keep it to wave 1 for this year. Let's get everybody ready, and then hopefully we can go into phase 2.
Yeah, I've watched, actually, Melissa and I have worked together in past companies she was at as well. And I think one of the most helpful things for you to share with this audience is kind of some of those lessons learned, what partners help unlock and progress that agenda, what are attributes that people can look for earlier on that are barriers or blockers, how do you make these ecosystems sing together in harmony so that you're never suffering, why did I go best of breed? Well, I went best of breed, and best of breed service is me, not 3 separate system fiefdoms, right?
Right. And I think for us, it's really knowing, again, it goes back to that foundational conversation, is really having, before you even go out to any vendors or anybody to work with, it's really understanding what your process is going to be, what you need to have, because every organization is different. And then really going to those vendors with that process and finding vendors who understand your process and can give you ideas of how to make it better. Or if they don't have that, we've saw that with yourselves and past lives with folks like Paradox. We were just kind of said, we want it to do this, and having vendors who can say, we can figure that out and let's do it together and let's build together. I think that has been the biggest helpful piece of it all, because we know what we want, but I need the experts to always kind of tell me, you're crazy, this isn't going to work, or here's maybe how it could work, or here's what you could do, or here's how to fix some issues, and lessons learned from other organizations. So I think it's really, again, having your plan in place, knowing what you want, knowing what your process is going to look like, and having that kind of skeleton ready. But again, being able to find partners that will help you build it out, realize your vision, and then can also be flexible and rigid. And I think if there are, and also knowing what your must-haves are, so the things that you can't bend on, just so when you are looking at vendors, if they can't give that to you, you obviously know that to kind of look elsewhere. I think that's been biggest lessons learned, is really, really have that internal conversation of the must-haves, what your foundation wants to look like, and then find those partners who really can help you achieve your vision at the end of the day. And and I will say it this 100 times, is don't stack everything and try to put everything on all at once. Our favorite word at Abbvie now on the PMO team is waves, because everything we do is going to be in a wave.
It's great advice. Melissa, question from the audience. What platforms are in that wave 1 for you guys? And why?
Yep. So again, it's all about that foundation. So both legacy companies were using Taleo. So again, for us, it was a great time for us to rebuild the process, and it's almost a retraining for everybody. So we're going to put everybody into one Taleo zone, which will be our backup ATS. We're obviously layering HiredScore over it, really because we had HiredScore prior to it, but again, it's one of those things where we kind of put it in. We've kind of left it there, and now we're really doing, Athena and team have been working on a reboot, and we're just going to kind of keep advancing it. And again, having a platform like a HiredScore to help us kind of get rid of a lot of that transactional work, and also put things in the system that we can measure, so it's not everything out on email, which is core. And then we are using Aperture as our CRM, and we're learning how to bake that into that ecosystem as well right now.
Great. Question for you that comes up a lot in these discussions, which is, measuring ROI, measuring value, and maximizing the return on this technology, this investment, and this time.
Right. Yep. So I think, again, it goes back to, again, knowing what you want at the end of the day. What are you measuring? Is it for quality? Is it for speed? I always come with the warning that building a tech stack your ultimate goal shouldn't only be in reduction of headcount. You might see that, but you're going to get so much more. So what we're looking at right now is ensuring that the recruiters in the spaces that we're hearing the complaints now. So it takes too long to get short lists because there's so many resumes to go through, or getting interviews up and running and those types of things, really putting some measurable metrics on those core things, because it becomes more about, time to fill is always a metric, but how long does it take you from opening a rec to getting that short list together to getting to interview? Again, we want all of that information that we're going to start monitoring on our recruiters, because we want to be able to say, how long is it taking, and if there are some gaps, what is it? Is it a recruiting gap, or is it a business situation that we need to have a conversation about? At the end of the day, the ROI could be headcount sometimes, but sometimes it's just also, again, back to that comment before about the flexibility and the agility that the recruiters will end up having, because it won't feel so heavy in the transactional work. The other things that you're going to see is just the speed pickup. So I think that's a big ROI at the end of the day. Your time to fill should shrink, but also those kind of measurable points within the recruitment process, you should start seeing that shrink as well as you put the right technology in place to help with that automation. You're never going to get rid of people in this space. It's such a people-focused profession that we're all in. The tech is really there to help us just not get into the minutia and really start to become more strategic versus transactional. So that's kind of the sell. Sometimes we might have some money savings on the way, but again, letting the managers feel like we are the experts in this space and things are speeding up. That's really what we're going for in this kind of first wave.
Yeah, great. So this stack, just for the audience, directly connects to the delivery of Abbvie's talent acquisition goals: speed, quality of experience, quality of talent, quality of hiring manager, which I think is, when you have a tech ecosystem with a different set of ROIs than your organizational's ROIs, kind of the confusion and the chaos ensues. So that alignment, I'm just always impressed with you and the team and how you put all that together.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's really exciting too, because overall future goal too is especially with the partnership with HiredScore is have everything kind of linked in. So at the end of the day, there's that total talent marketplace that we're also developing. And hopefully, again, the recruiters have time to just keep feeding those databases to come into that. And I think when you kind of connect it all together, the TA team really becomes the expert in what's available, whether it's internal, passive, or active candidates currently, which is what we're excited to strive for.
And Melissa, this vision of yours is of you and the team. It's a global vision. So worth just how many countries is this going to be rolled out? What's the rollout plan? Do you start big bang everything everywhere? Do you start one market first? How do you isolate that market? That would be great.
Yeah, we have about over 20 countries that we would look to kind of go live in. Again, like I said, our favorite word is waves. So we are going to work in waves. What we've noticed too is, again, I think in the past, it's really been a kind of a one size fits all, really making sure that the globe feels like they are part of that TA process, having the ability to bend, again, making sure that everybody's backbone and that foundation is right, basically from our ATS. And all the stuff that goes into it is ready to go. And then we'll go in waves as we kind of get everybody settled. They'll get all of their kind of assets, and we're hoping to turn on HiredScore. Right now, it's just for the US. We're going to try to get everybody on globally. Also look at putting in something like a hiring manager hub, again, to keep people out of email, keep kind of the flow going. And then we kind of figure that will take probably over a year to get kind of everybody foundationally good and everybody on the same systems. But our goal is we don't want people to feel the have and have not. So we really want everybody to be on one global process and system.
Global rollout. Advice to the peer group. We have just a few minutes left. If anyone has questions, we are taking them, and we welcome your questions. I think one thing that you touched on just at the end, that hiring manager hub, often a place where people don't even have data to diagnose the point of problem. Something else we found is diversity and inclusion. People often don't even have the data to understand where are their gaps and how do we express them across all the boards. So maybe just a little bit more about bringing that digital experience, its goal, to capture the data, and would be great.
Right. So I think for us too, and the thing that I've always loved about Hub is, coming from a recruiting background, how many times, everything you go out of the system, you send emails to the hiring managers, everything ends up being email, something happens, now you're keeping Excel spreadsheets of all the candidates that you met with and all that feedback and things like that. And that's really why I've pitched the Hub, is because all that just stays in a system and it goes back and forth. Managers are never asking how many candidates are in the rec, how many candidates have I seen? We can also kind of ping them and put some kind of pressure on them to say, hey, the market's good. You need to look at your resumes and kind of put those insights for them too, if you haven't looked at those resumes. So, and then you pull the data from it. So if something is going on and, you have the ability to kind of say, all right, let's talk about why it's taking, a month to go from interview to hire or offer. So that's really why we're using Hub. Again, it's to take everything. The more you can keep the recruiters in one system and not keep going out into your ATS, into your email, into your CRM, again, the more productive folks are going to be. And again, the more of kind of just the questions and all the extras that you have to do, like Excel spreadsheets or additional emails, that goes away because it's already baked in for you. And that's really what we're striving to do, is really just keep everybody kind of in the system for most of their, 80% of their time.
And making sure those systems speak to your other ecosystem is right. Very important. I think
overall your data needs to be from, we're hoping at the end of this, once we build the ecosystem, we can start really telling the story of when maybe a candidate enters into Aperture, into our CRM, into our pipeline, and what that lifeline that life process looks like for them. How long does it take them to get into roles and hired and things like that? So we're really starting to look at the data and how do we tell that full story.
Great. Melissa, we have just 2 minutes left. We do have a question. Where does quality of hire factor into your thinking?
I think honestly, for me, quality of hire is such a hard thing to measure, because at the end of the day, the TA doesn't always have, the hiring manager who decides and things like that. I think we're still figuring that out, to be honest. It's going to play in there, but I think, again, that's something else, is as we build the ecosystem, how are we doing? For me, it's how are we doing with the pipelines? What does that health of the pipelines look like? How quickly are people going from interview to hire? I think that's going to be the quality. I think next generation is as we start to look at how are people doing 30, 60, 90 days out, and what is that retention rate? And that's something we're working on as well.
Melissa, it's been such a pleasure having you with us, and to be bold enough to go live when others fully recorded and airbrushed and everything else. If anyone listening in wants to find you, LinkedIn, I imagine, is probably the best way. Melissa Katz?
Yep, that's it. Great. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Always such a pleasure. Talk soon.